The idea is that we have two cycles. How might we questions are created with our team in mind. I would love to show you my absolutely favorite tool for low-fidelity exploration until you come up with a final solution that has the highest chance of being successful, and sign off on any issues that touch UX or UI. Welcome to Design Hangout, a series where we talk all things design. In today's episode, we will focus fully on explaining the UX design process. Learning the UX process from scratch with what's available online will be extremely confusing for me if I were at the beginning of my UX design journey. There are a lot of scattered articles, books, and videos, but when I was recording my Become a UX Designer in 2023 video, I couldn't find a really comprehensive guide. So I decided to create one for you before it's time to record Become a UX Designer in 2024. We will mostly base our process on the double diamond model. It's the most popular approach in UX design. It covers all the steps and phases necessary to execute a successful UX design project. A little bit of history. The double diamond model was popularized around 2005 by the British Design Council. So as everything in UX design, it's relatively new, but at the same time, it already has around 18 years of proven track record of success and really didn't change it much during this time. The idea is that we have two cycles, the first and the second diamond, and each of them consists of the diverge and converge phases. The first diamond is about designing the right thing, so we will focus on research and defining the problem. And the second diamond is about designing the thing right, so it's more about finding the solutions, iterating and testing. The diverge phases are where we explore and open up. We do research, brainstorm, and sketch low-fidelity solutions. The converge phases are where we narrow down and define the problem, the corrections needed, and the final solution. The main four phases of the project are discover and define in the first diamond, and develop and deliver in the second diamond, and we will go through all of them. The very first phase of the process is discover or research, and it is a divergent phase. We are at the beginning of the new project, and we need to explore what data we already have, what information we're missing, and perform the research to gather this data. The starting point is exploring the brief, and your project can come from many places. If you're working with a client, it usually comes from your first conversation and exploring their needs. And if you're working in an in-house team, an issue can be raised by your leadership, by your product manager, any of your teammates, so designers, developers, by you, by anyone from the other department, or even directly by your users or customers. No matter the origin, you will need a design brief to define what the problem is, where we are when it comes to potential solutions, and what activities we need to perform. Also, it's just an initial plan, and a lot can change as you go through the process. Before moving forward, make sure that your brief lists all the known challenges, problems, data points, existing research, and previous discussions that took place. The next step before diving into research is to cluster the topics so that we have a high-level overview of what needs to be covered, and that we can potentially limit the research if needed. To give you an example, I'll show you one of my past projects, the SourceGraph browser extension improvements. SourceGraph is a code intelligence platform for developers, and their browser extension brings the code intelligence directly to the code hosts like GitHub or GitLab. The problem was that the browser extension was difficult to install and set up because of a lot of design debt that was accumulated over time. And after analyzing the brief, I've differentiated the following topics. First, the design debt. We needed to rethink the decisions and flows that were added over time without analyzing the flow as a whole. The second topic was discoverability, how people learn about the extension and in which part of the process we inform them about it. The third topic was awareness, communicating the value and addressing some security concerns. The fourth topic was setup for private code, and it was the biggest UX challenge where a lot of people were dropping off. And the fifth topic was the general usability. We had a lot of paper cut issues that were lowering the overall quality of the experience. By the way, if you've been enjoying this video so far, you can give it a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos like this. Thank you! Now that we have all the topics defined, we can move forward to the primary and secondary research. And in this phase, you need to work really closely with your product manager because usually all the research activities are on the line between the design and product research. Primary research is the research that our team performs ourselves, like user interviews, usability testing of the current solutions, stakeholders interviews, competitor analysis, or surveys. Secondary research, also known as desk research, refers to gathering all the existing research findings and other necessary information that is relevant to this project. And secondary research usually is divided into two categories. Internal, where we look into our company's existing research repository to look for the past primary research artifacts, customer journey maps, deliverables from the workshops, or some surveys and reports. External secondary research, on the other hand, is focused on the sources outside of our organization. So, for example, open data repositories, reports created by reputable sources, or some white papers. The result of this first diverging phase is the accumulation of the raw, unstructured research findings. You will get a lot of documents, notes, recordings, survey results, usability testing spreadsheets, etc. The second phase of the first diamond is define or synthesis. Now we need to focus on systemizing the whole research that we have and creating artifacts that will be useful for us in the upcoming ideation stage. And our role as designers is to make sense of all the research that we've gathered and differentiate what's important and what's not so that both we and our teams can gain some clarity. The first step is to group our research into themes, and we can definitely reuse the topics that we've created in the previous section and add some more if needed. Then, from all the themes, we need to conclude the insights, and insights are truths about the user experience or the system. And following the example of the browser extension project, from the theme of discoverability, we can derive three following insights. The information about the browser extension is presented too early to the user during the onboarding process before they can truly realize its value and how it works. There is no installation trigger directly in the app, so the user cannot enter the process after dismissing the initial pop-up. The information about the browser extension appears only once during the whole journey, and there is no in-context reminders or campaigns plans for the rest of the flow. Knowing the insights, we need to now build the opportunity areas. We need to describe the potential areas of action that will guide us through the ideation phase. And for my project, I've differentiated two areas. An intentional system of reminders and in-app notifications that remind users about the browser extension. A permanent place for the information about the browser extension and the installation trigger directly in the app. Now it's time to revisit the personas that we've probably mentioned in the initial brief. We need to answer the question, who is it designed for? In most cases, if you're working with an existing project, you need to assign the existing personas and maybe mention some characteristics important for this particular project. If you don't have the personas yet, you can either create them, which can be a big project on its own, or create user avatars based on some behavioral characteristics important for this particular project. For example, in my browser extension project, I assigned only one persona, which is developers, because the browser extension is used mostly by people fitting this persona. They are focused on efficiency and reducing friction while working. They are used to patterns from the IDEs and other developer tools, and they are interested in integrating source graph into their daily workflow. At that time, we didn't have fully developed, well-researched personas at SourceGraph. We just had those user avatars like developers and admins, etc. So I've decided to use one of the avatars and mention additional key characteristics important for the project. And in many cases, it is enough. If you don't have well-researched, well-developed, complex personas, you can do more harm than good if you're trying to just guess certain characteristics like age, location, or needs. Another thing that we need to focus on are problem statements and how might we questions. They allow us to scope down the focus and really define what's important in the project. A problem statement is a brief description of a need or a problem that needs to be solved. And we have a template here. Who needs to achieve what, because to, and a compelling insight. And for example, for my project, it will be developers need to discover the browser extension at a proper step of their flow, to understand its value and enjoy code intelligence on their code hosts. The how might we are short questions that start the process of generating the ideas and solutions. And for example, it would be how might we present the browser extension to our users so they understand its value and make the decision to install it. Problem statements describe what's needed from the user perspective and how might we questions are created with our team in mind. And the last step is to define the KPIs, so key performance indicators, and the goals for the project. And when it comes to defining the goals, it's really important to connect them to the high-level company goals. And in the case of the browser extension project, the high-level company goal was to increase monthly active users. And here are the project goals that we came up with. Increase the number of people installing the extension, decrease the number of people uninstalling the extension, and reduce friction when using SourceGraph for private code. If we were to achieve those goals, we would contribute to the high-level company goal of increasing monthly active users. And on the other hand, KPIs are metrics that you will be tracking your project success against. And for the browser extension project, here are the KPIs that we had. We, of course, had the monthly active users, then the number of hovers per week, so the engagement with the extension, number of installations, number of uninstalls, user lifetime, so how long the user had the extension installed, and the successful connections with private code. We can say that during the synthesis phase, we've created a funnel that allowed us to distill information from a really raw research findings to very tangible how might we statements and KPIs. At the end of the define phase, we have our brief enriched with all this new information, and it's a great base for our next step, develop. Before we move forward, I would like to make it clear that not all the projects follow the same design process. What we're talking about today is a perfect blueprint that should guide you through your work, but of course you need some flexibility to adjust the process depending on the project. And you might want to skip some phases, maybe add some activities or change them slightly, and it will all depend on the needs of the project and the resources. The most important thing is to, on one side, understand the ideal process, and on the other side, be able to adjust it to your needs. You need to be able to explain why you're changing the process and how it will benefit a particular project. The worst thing that can happen is to adjust the process without understanding the consequences. Now we're moving on to the second diamond, doing things right. We already know what the problem is and what we should focus on, so now it's time to come up with solutions. The third phase is develop or ideation, and it is a divergent phase. So the objective is to explore multiple ideas, and we will work in the ideation evaluation cycles. Ideation is when you come up with ideas without much judgment. It's the fun part of the process because you need to release all the constraints. Don't think about the feasibility or resources at this point, just explore the ideas. Some people talk about the yes and approach instead of the judgmental yes but approach that we usually take on as designers. For this whole phase, use low-fidelity mockups, sketches, and text. The objective is to quickly create low-cost artifacts that you will feel comfortable changing or even throwing away. I would love to show you my absolutely favorite tool for low-fidelity exploration, Iterate. It's a web-based app that uses this sketch-like style that gives people impression of a sketch so they don't pay attention too much to details, but at the same time, it's extremely aesthetically pleasing and editable for you. You can basically create any mockup you need here using simple shapes and text. And to just show you quickly how the tool works, here are some mockups that I've created for the browser extension project: the banner, the installation popover prompt, and the extension window itself. Iterate has a free version you can use to try it out, and I'll link it below in the description. Here, I'm demonstrating the paid version, which is like $7 a month, so it's not really expensive. But you can save your work with this paid version and you can collaborate with your team members. After ideation, it's time for evaluation. You need to notice all the pros and cons of all the ideas that you've produced and select the best ones. Of course, you need to work together with your team. So after the first selection that you can do yourself, you need to present your low-fidelity designs to your team and gather feedback. I personally like to move the artifacts from Iterate to Figma to just keep everything in one tool. You can simply do it by selecting everything and copying it as PNG or SVG. By the way, if you want me to create a tutorial specifically for UX design in Iterate, let me know in the comments below. In addition, to gather feedback from your team, you can use different methods, like for example, impact feasibility matrix that will allow you to compare different ideas on those two dimensions, or dot votings, where people have a finite number of dots that they can vote with for their favorite solution. If needed, you can also consult your low-fidelity designs with domain experts, the company advisors, or even with users to just gather their thoughts on those high-fidelity ideas. As a result of this develop ideation phase, you should end up with a leading idea or a small number of ideas that you would like to develop and test with users. The last phase of the whole process is deliver or implementation, where your goal is to create a visual representation of the idea, test it with users, and iterate on it until you come up with a final solution that has the highest chance of being successful. This phase is based on a three-step cycle: build, test, and iterate. And here you're working with high-fidelity designs and clickable prototypes. And of course, you may need to go through the cycle more than once with engagement from your team and from your users. At the end of all of those cycles, you need to prepare your designs for the final handoff. And it means that you need to take into consideration all the variants, edge cases, and interactions. So your Figma files will be really complex because they will include all the mockups and annotations. And in addition to that, you may need to prepare the design specification. It's a document that explains all the functionality and helps your reviewers understand your designs. The final step of the process is assisting developers in implementation of your designs. And as a designer, you need to ensure quality and also make changes to the design if needed, if any issues were to arise. And I like to set expectations early in the process. So even before the implementation starts, I establish with my team that developers should share their work early and often with me for review. Also, before merging any changes, I need to do the design QA and sign off on any issues that touch UX or UI. After going through the whole design process based on the double diamond model, we have one more important step to take. Measure the results and iterate on our work. After releasing the product, it's extremely important that you track the KPIs to determine whether or not the project was successful and what you need to change in the future iterations. I recommend creating a task for yourself and for your product manager to regularly come back to the KPIs for this project, because as you move forward with the next batch of work, it's easy to forget about controlling them regularly. And there you have it, the entire UX design process. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Design Hangout. Please remember to subscribe and like this video. And if you have any questions or ideas for the future episodes, please leave the comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.